So what you're looking at here is the cathedral at the Pechersk Lavra in Kiev. It's one of the most holy sites in all of Eastern Orthodoxy. And I'm here because you may have seen recently that there have been fights over who gets to stay here. Most notably, in the last week or two, a group was expelled from here, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and it was expelled from here for a variety of reasons. Now look, religion is a tricky topic, and I'm not going to go into great depth about Ukrainian religions. As a person who is not religious, I still respect faith, and I'm not going to comment on that. Additionally, this is a very, very complex and nuanced issue. And I am not going to go into great depth into it at this time, so just consider this kind of a primer and a way of answering the criticisms that are being leveled against Ukraine for kicking out that particular sect of the Eastern Orthodox Church. So this is my little brief vlog about the expulsion of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church from the Pechersk Lavra. This is a cornerstone of what the 11th century version of the Orthodox Church that would have been built here. And in many ways, seeing as this is the first construction that was made, or one of the first constructions that were made in Ukraine back in the 19th century, in the 9th century in Kiev, it could be said that this is the cornerstone of all Slavic identity, certainly religious identity. So why did they kick out the Ukrainian Orthodox Church? Well, as I said, I wasn't going to go into depth into religion in Ukraine, but at some point you have to at least bring it up as a topic. So here's the deal. Ukraine is a multi-religious society. There's an enormous Jewish community here. There's Islam here, most notably in Tatarstan, where the Crimean Khanate was. Many, many Muslims and mosques out there. As far as Christianity is concerned, you have a plethora of different Orthodox sects and religions in Ukraine. You have Catholicism and, yes, indeed, also Protestant faithful. When it comes to, I have been coming here 22 years. I remember the first time I came here was the visit of Pope John Paul I. And I remember the streets of this town being lined with Orthodox priests decrying the Pope's visit as a visit by the Antichrist. How far we've come. Last year when I was out in Lviv, a place that is very mixed in its ethnicity and its religious beliefs, I saw a promenade through the city which was respected by the entire community. And I am sure that not every person who stood in respect as the procession walked past them was one religion or the other. What is most important is that they are Ukrainian now. And that brings me to the UOC. And this requires a little bit of history. Okay, so when we're talking about the UOC, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, this is a church that is still faithful to the patriarchy in Moscow, Patriarch Kirill, former KGB agent and widely believed to be incredibly corrupt, if not least of which by his lavish lifestyle. And what happened in 2014, after the Maidan and the beginning of this war, the Ukrainians went to the ecumenical head of the Orthodox Church in Istanbul. And he's basically the guy who does all the paperwork, in essence, for Orthodoxy. Again, I am not going to go into the depths of religion here, because I am a neophyte when it comes to that kind of stuff. The Ukrainians went to them and said, look, we see ourselves as separate. This is post-2014. And we would like to have our own church. And this guy in Istanbul, which is kind of the center of Orthodoxy, agreed to let the Ukrainians have their own church and their own patriarch. But many continued to follow the UOC, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, despite its connections to Moscow. And it also gets into debate about, there are people who dispute whether or not Ukraine needs to have this divorce from Russia. Again, topic for another day. Let me just answer this. You may have seen recently things like fighting in churches between clergy and, say, soldiers. You may have seen protests outside of this very holy spot, this very holy location for all Orthodox followers. That is because that sect, the UOC, is still beholden to Kirill, who is an organ of the state, many believe, and with good reason, in my opinion. So they have expelled them because they are still answering to Moscow. They're still answering to the Kremlin in essence. And they expelled them because also during this war, repeatedly there have been instances where followers, clergy of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church have been found to be active participants and supporters of separatist movements, and ultimately Russia. They've found money, they've found propaganda, they've found supplies and support in many of these monasteries, some even here in the Lavra. So ultimately, the Ukrainians decided that they would kick out this particular Orthodox church because they were just too close to Russia. That's what this is about. So if you hear people talking about Ukraine discriminating against religion, well, the central synagogue is not more than 10 minutes drive from here in the center of town. There's a mosque, there are Catholic churches, many different sects of Orthodoxy. It gets very complicated and convoluted. They are not suppressing religion. They are suppressing a fifth column posing as a religious belief. So, let the debate begin, because religion gets tricky. But I support this decision to expel the UOC from the Pechersk Lavra. They're free to, of course, stay in Ukraine, I'm sure. But, as long as they support Kirill and Kirill supports the Kremlin, it is antithetical to allow them to stay at this most holy site of Christian Orthodoxy. So, I hope that explains at least a little bit. You can dig it up more, and if people really want me to do a full-fledged dig into it, as dangerous as it is, I will. But I hope that at least answers any criticisms you're hearing about anti-religious movements within Ukraine headed by the Zelensky administration. So as always, Slava Ukraini, Geroyam Slava.